So welcome to the I think this is the fifth webinar over the last few months that we are doing. Today's session is Digital Maintenance and AI. My name is Alok Pant. I'm CEO of Unvired, based in Houston, Texas. And I have the pleasure of being joined today by two of the foremost leaders in the asset management world, especially in the SAP ecosystem. So joining me today is Norm Poynter and Praveen Kale. Norm is director of asset management at Advocates. He's been doing asset management consulting and implementations for a long time, and he'll introduce himself shortly. Praveen is our vice president at Unvired, and he's been building a lot of these mobile and digital apps and now AI applications. So before we dive in, let's go over with some housekeeping notes. So at any point, you can submit your questions in the Q&A, the chat box that you see there. We will also have an interactive question and answer at the end. We want this to be an interactive session, so for sure we'll take questions. And also for all the registrants and attendees for this webinar, we are offering a special proof of concept offer where we will, help you begin your AI journey in the maintenance world. So yeah, so with that, I would request Norm, if you can quickly introduce yourself and give the audience, some information about your background.
Sure, thanks, Alec. Norm Poynter. I have been working in the SAP space since roughly 1997. Started as an ABAPer in the plant maintenance module. Quickly started to work on functional consulting as well. And then was really fortunate enough to travel around the world and speak at a lot of the SAP conferences. I'll be back in Australia this fall at the Mastering SAP SCM and EAM conference, hopefully speaking about asset performance management then. And I'm really pleased to be meeting here with Praveen and Alec and his team, talking about what seems to be taking the world by storm, this thing called artificial intelligence. Thanks, Alec.
Great. Thanks, Norm. Very glad that you're able to join us today. Praveen, please go ahead.
Thanks, Alok. It's a pleasure to be on this panel discussion with the two of you. To everyone else, my name is Praveen. I'm the VP for products at Unvired. And my role at Unvired is to evaluate new technologies and come up with solutions that simplify the life of a technician in the field.
Great. All right. So here is a quick look at the agenda. So we've done the introductions. We'll just do a brief background about Unvired and about AMA also, but quickly dive into, what are the industry challenges today in the world of asset maintenance? What are industry practices today? What are the leading, methodologies that people are adopting? And then the main topic of today's discussion is artificial intelligence. What is the hype and what is the reality? We'll dive into some use cases. We'll talk about there are two main, components of AI: the predictive AI, which is the more familiar AI that many of us have already been implementing, and then there is this new emerging world of generative AI. We'll talk about that and how that relates to maintenance. And equally importantly, we'll talk about responsible generative AI. There are risks in this technology, and we have to be aware of it and mitigate those. And of course, we'll do some Q&A. Okay, Norm, if you want to quickly go over your company's background.
Thank you. Just quickly, started this company circa 2014, 2015, I guess, and the key to this was the advocacy component. We as a group of eclectic consultants, I'll call ourselves, many of us who were at the conferences over the, from 2005 forward, felt that there was a need for more education in the market and more advocacy for the customers. So we really focus on being that niche boutique specialist in the asset management space and really try to bring webinars like this or knowledge or education to the customer and speak on behalf of the customer, especially when they're faced with upgrades or implementations and just don't have that knowledge base and can't quickly or readily access it. That's where I think we really try to support our customers in the work that we do.
Okay, and I see that you have a strong industrial focus: chemicals, utilities, oil and gas, not retail, not finance. It's really the heavy industry world, obviously. Maintenance,
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to go very quickly over this. So, just so that the people can relate to our content. So we are a certified SAP partner. We're also a Google Cloud partner company. We basically mobilize the connected worker. So we deliver, mobile applications for, plant maintenance, for your work orders, rounds, digital forms. And now we are incorporating AI into these digital applications that we have. So quick recognition. So we every 3 years we get certified by SAP, and Gartner has featured us. And so we certainly, the work we are doing with all our people, some of you on the call, that's being recognized by Gartner and other analysts. So we wanted to let people know of some of the background of the company. And finally, our differentiators are really the most important thing is happy reference customers. And that's what we want to, that's how we want to work with you all. And as you can see, just like Norm, as you could imagine, our customer base is heavy industrial, also chemicals, mining, utilities, oil and gas. So let's dive into the meat of today's discussion, because that's why we are all here. So we want to begin with some industry challenges that we are facing. Norm is right there in the forefront from an asset domain perspective. Praveen is there from a technology perspective. So we'd love to hear their perspective, starting with Norm. Norm, what are you seeing today? Is it the skill gap? Or is it the aging workforce? Is it mobility? What are you seeing today? What is on top of the mind of the work maintenance leaders there?
Well, arguably, I think it's everything you mentioned, and it's been that way for the course of my career, honestly. Data has always been master and transactional, a challenge for maintenance staff and maintenance managers, and certainly communicating that data in a way that senior executive can actually digest it has always been a challenge and continues to be a challenge. Certainly the lack of mobility in the asset management space. I mean, there's lots of products out there, but I still end up at companies that aren't doing anything on a mobile device. So subsequently, the data is not necessarily getting collected at the right time in the right place. And if we look at examples like how do Google Maps stay up to date, it's because we're all carrying phones that are communicating back to Google, and that map is being updated second by second. And so the onus or the burden of that data collection is falling on the individual, the consumer in our case. We haven't really, I'll say, pushed that burden out easily to the workforce to support collecting data and then ensuring that when it's being collected and being checked and the transactions are being performed, that the loop is being closed. We're often leaving the loop open, so we're not forcing equipment history to be collected, or we're not forcing work orders to be closed, or a variety of things like that. And some of that's due to it's just too difficult, and folks don't have the understanding, don't have the time, don't understand the why. So I think that we have to accelerate that, and we have to automate that process in a way using technology that is turning folks into maybe more data quality advisors or data accuracy checkers or something like that versus providing data, which is what's happening today.
Okay, and then what about the skills gap? Because this always comes up, right? So has anything shifted in the last 1 or 2 years? Is the gap widening, the problem deepening from a workforce perspective?
Well, I speak to a lot of my friends who are of my age, which is old, in the consulting space, and the next generation of consultants don't have the knowledge that we had as we came through the ranks of implementing SAP, as an example. I feel that the technical staff, the maintenance staff, reliability engineering, et cetera, there is a lack of cohesiveness in that knowledge, maybe a lot more siloed today than it once was. We're not working as tightly knit as teams. We're not sitting in rooms and performing failure mode effect analysis, let's say, together, or HAZOP IDs. We're doing it remotely, or we just don't have that connectivity as a human race, if you wish. And so subsequently, knowledge sharing isn't occurring as well as it once did. I come from an apprenticeship background. I work tightly with a journeyman to learn my craft. That it's different now. It's not as succinct as it once was. So I think there's definitely a skills gap, knowledge, understanding in industry.
All right, and it seems to me in that case, the use of technologies like AI can certainly help with the learning and training aspects. So it seems that there is a gap that can be filled by these some of these newer technologies. Okay, that's good. So Praveen, let me bring you in now, and maybe with a slightly different twist to this. So asset management. When we talk of asset management, we frequently encounter safety also, right? HSE, health, safety, environment, and work orders, and to be executed in conjunction with work permits and safety forms, right? So you've been working with some customers in terms of digitizing safety along with digitizing maintenance, right? So what are you seeing in terms of, are people still using paper forms? So what are you seeing in terms of safety and in general also in asset management from customer perspective?
Yeah, so to begin with, Alok, just adding upon what Norm mentioned as industry challenges before coming to the paper. So basically, there are three challenges that I see when I'm interacting with the customers that we have, and what they would like to improve in their processes, right? The first thing is to do with inaccurate reporting at the point of failure, right?
Mhm.
So people are not able to capture that data accurately, which results in cascading effects subsequently. So inaccurate reporting, inaccurate assignment of workforce, then impact on the business subsequently. That is one issue. The second thing is access to contextual information at the time of maintenance. So for a technician in the field who is conducting his maintenance activities, he would like to have access to the documents, the service manuals, standard operating procedures, historical maintenance carried out on the equipment. And let's say if it's a junior technician who's been assigned to a task, which is for a senior technician, he doesn't have the skills. So he needs access to training material and guidance from an expert, which may not be easily available to him, right? So this is another challenge. And the third challenge is from the management perspective, wherein they're not able to get the real-time visibility of the health of their plant and its impact on profitability of their business. The other important point that you mentioned was to do with health and safety and what are people expecting in terms of how they can improve the processes around that, right? So the permitting, everything traditionally happens on a piece of paper. And one of the challenges is to move away from paper into digital. So we're seeing a lot of customers wanting us to digitize their paper-based processes, including the work permitting processes, which may be very specific to certain industries. How work permitting happens within an oil gas industry versus how it happens within a chemical industry is different, right? The ability to define the work permitting processes, make it customizable, and have these different levels of approvals before a work can be actually carried out on the field are some of the other requirements that people are having in terms of augmenting their existing maintenance activities in the field.
That really helps. I think the whole idea of safety and asset management working hand in hand is extremely important for the plant uptime, right? So all right. So then we talked about the challenges or now let's move to practices. So what are some of the things that people have adopted to improve their enhance their maintenance? So Norm, I guess we've got some points here about getting away from paper and mobility and then the AI aspects of it. But if there's one or two points you want to highlight in terms of what people are really adopting, what would you like to kind of mention?
Sure. So certainly, I think we're seeing a lot more ingestion of IoT data into systems that can perform analytics of, pick your word, machine learning type analytics or algorithm-based analytics. However, I think it's more than just IoT. It's the entire context of the asset. So if we go back several years, Christian Steenstrup from Gartner presented the 360-degree view of the asset. So IoT is only one view of that asset. We're working with customers to try to even use SAP as an IoT sensor. So we're looking at what happened transactionally, both present and historically, for that asset, alongside what happened from an IoT perspective on a given day, in an attempt to look at the broad base of that equipment's activities leading up to a malfunction, or even leading up to, let's say, its predicted asset life cycle from a depreciation schedule not meeting the intention of that schedule. So I see lots of companies that really can't even compare those two. They can't get the costing correct to understand the depreciation, just the way their data is being collected. So I think if we focus just on IoT ingestion, we see one view of the asset. But if we start to look at where else we get data from, then I think we start to see the holistic view. So certainly there's more and more data coming into the systems. There's more and more analytics being applied, but there's still gaps in some of those analytics. Long text is one that's stood out for years in that, it's a simple, we're talking conversational interface. It's a simple conversational interface that's not being analyzed. And yet there's often nuggets of gold buried away in long text, which could be through machine learning algorithm based on a set vernacular. Determine times did we see someone put the word replace or repair or align, or even let's change the type of silicon we're using in that long text that's being missed. So I think the map and the roadmap that we're all trying to achieve is the right one. I just think we have to get those views correct and then apply some of these technologies and analytics on those views.
Right, and that's very interesting, your point about long text, and we'll talk about it because that fits in with how I think one of the areas where Gen AI or generative AI can really be used. But one more question before we move to Praveen. Are you seeing people have really moved from reactive to predictive maintenance? You talked of ML and algorithms, but what percentage of customers do you feel have adopted predictive?
Very, very few. Very few. One, it's a trust thing. I'm not sure that the old guards really trust that IoT sensors can tell me when my machine's going to fail. So there's always that issue. Two, I think we're inundated with so much data that we don't necessarily. I mean, in some cases, certainly there's vibration analysis or temperature or different things, acoustics that tell us, yes, okay, this device is going to fail or this machine is going to fail. However, that's few and far between, because a lot of plants I go to still haven't got their criticality figured out. So it's hard to even look at what assets are critical, which assets would we actually apply this technology to, and then how would we manage that little subset of data to actually prove a business case to say, well, we can move from time to condition-based to predictive. It's a big leap to go from time to predictive. It's a massive leap.
Right. And I remember a conversation, interesting conversation. This was a few years ago, and I was, evangelizing machine learning, and I was told, to your point, that the guy at the rig, he's not going to listen to some ML model and tell him to shut down the production because
That's right.
that just won't happen. But this is 5 years ago. But yeah, to that same sentiment, right? I mean, I'm not going to shut down something when I'm seeing everything is working smoothly because your model is telling me that tomorrow something will break. But anyway, very valid point. So, Praveen, we will dive more into the AI aspects, but do you want to comment anything on what you are seeing from some practices customers adopting in mobile, digital, and?
Yeah, I mean, just another point a bit about predictive maintenance, Alok. Not just the information that you collect in the field. And Norm said about SAP being used as an IoT sensor, right? An example for that is one of the use cases that I was discussing with a customer who mentioned that the production orders that we create for the manufacturing of a certain material, right, on a particular machine results in a failure, right? So would it be possible to generate some kind of a predictive model wherein, based on the historical information that we have collected, contextual data, wherein if a certain batch of a certain material is going to be produced on a production line, there might be an event of a failure, right? So some kind of predictive eventing to let the technicians know that there might be a potential cause for a failure. So this is just one such use case on the predictive part of it.
Okay, all right. I think we're moving to the AI piece now. Yes, so let me kind of start off here. We thought that it would be good to level set everybody because AI is both an old and a new term, and it means different things to different people, right? So AI, artificial intelligence, is really the ability for computers to do human-like tasks, right? That's the basic definition. And then there are two types of AI, right? One is predictive AI, and then, as we mentioned before, is the new and emerging field of generative AI. So let's kind of just define what each of these means, right? So predictive AI is really looking at historical data and making predictions about what future events could happen, what potential failures could happen. So it's more of, linear programming, statistics, and all that, right? So it's more mathematics and that goes, you look at you fit a model, it's a regression, maybe some kind of regression model, a best fit, straight line, quadratic, whatever, and then you're predicting based on historical data. I think we get that. It's been around for a while. And now and generative AI, on the other hand, is really creates new content, right? It generates new content. It could be text, it could be audio, it could be video, code, or even images, right? And so you have companies like today, Mid-Journey. You can write, give me an elephant and a lion together, and a beautiful image will come up. So that's what generative AI is, right? Or you can say, hey, Chat GPT. We've all used Chat GPT, right? Tell me, where should I go? All the places in Canada, and maybe it can give me a better answer than what Norm you can tell us, right? So that's generative AI, right? I mean, you're creating content, you're giving an input, and you're getting answers back, and it's multimodal, right? All kinds of channels you can get the answer. So the question that then comes up is, what is the hype versus reality? So I think in predictive AI, definitely, and we'll talk about some use cases. People are using machine learning models. That's definitely there. It's been there for a while. Generative AI, yes, we have to approach it with caution, right? There are risks. We've heard of wrong answers coming back, and it's really early days. So I think we have to really identify the use cases. So does generative AI have potential? If you look at any reports from McKinsey and SAP and whoever, everybody strongly believes there is potential, but these are early days. So yes, there is hype, but definitely after the hype will come value. That's for sure. Okay, so we want to talk of some real customer use cases to make this a discussion which people can relate to from a reality perspective. So we want to start off one with a predictive AI case study, where we are actually doing for one of our customers, and it's really going to be machine learning based image inspection. So they collect a lot of images around ropes, and we are actually working to train, not build models already there, to train a machine learning model that can take these images. And today a human ranks them from a rating scale of maybe 1 to 10. And now the idea is that this machine learning model will be fed the picture or the image of the rope, and it will determine what the rating is. If it's 7, you got to take the asset out of service. If it's 1, you can still use it. And the business driver was really something we've talked about before. So think about it. These ropes are all kinds of ships all over the world, and there is a lack of expertise after COVID. Going to places was very difficult, and a lot of time customers do not have the skilled people to inspect ropes because they are not in the rope inspection business. They are in the business of operating ships and vessels, right? So and it becomes very costly to fly somebody offshore and inspect a rope or somewhere, so there was a lot of business drivers. So so basically the customer said, listen, I want to implement a machine learning model. So what we've done is we've taken about 6 months of data and trained the model, and this is now going to be done by the model. Couple of nuances here or challenges that we had in this was, the customer wanted to make sure that the model could be executed offline also, so on mobile devices, because what happens is, and also to be integrated with a mobile app. So a few years ago, we developed a mobile app for inspections, and now this machine learning model has to be integrated with the mobile app, right? And it has to work offline also. So these are not trivial matters. So those were some of the challenges that we had to overcome in terms of implementing this machine learning model on a mobile device. Requirements also for ML models. So you have to really scale it down, etc. So we won't go into details, but suffice it to say that this is a machine model that will not replace humans, by the way. It is augmenting the human worker there, right? The worker still is there inspecting, taking pictures, but the role of the worker has changed. It's more about getting the right data and validating the model, helping improve the model, rather than making that decision themselves. So that was a rope inspection ML model. We have some other use cases. So Praveen, maybe I'll start with you, then we'll go with Norm. You've been working, Praveen, with some utilities, and can you describe a couple of predictive AI cases you've been working with?
Yes, Alok. Like I was mentioning earlier, one of the challenges that people have in the field today is with incorrect reporting, right? So they're not able to accurately report what the issue in the field is. So this is where we have predictive AI coming into play, right? So as we said, these machine learning models are nothing but representations of human intelligence as computations. And these ML models have to be trained in such a fashion that they are able to identify the defects. As an example, in a utilities company that we are doing a POC with, they have these assets which are distributed over a large geographical area. We have these poles with cross arms on these poles, with transformers mounted on these poles, and these visual inspections basically take a lot of time. So in terms of inspections, they have advanced quite a bit in the ways of using drones to do the visual inspections of the asset, top to down, bottom up, everything, right? But the ability to actually draw inferences from what they see ultimately depends upon the skill or the experience of the technician, right? So in order to automate the capturing of the health of that particular asset, we are trying to come up with a learning model which labels the asset with thousands of images that they have captured over a period of time, indicating the damage that has been caused to that particular asset. So where does the data come from, right? So like you said, the accuracy of the prediction depends upon the historical data that you have collected. So these data that may have been collected over a period of years can be as images, can be as videos. So we need to have the processes in place to extract images from these video captures, enable the technicians to label them as being defective, the degrees of damage that have been caused to the asset. And once all these images have been labeled, they have to be fed into this particular model. And this model is then exported to the mobile device. Let's say TensorFlow is one of the more popular frameworks which are being used to export and process these offline models for use on the mobile device. So technicians, what we expect them to do is take a picture of the asset, and that image will then be processed to identify the defect, create a notification, and then actually identify the object part and the damage automatically so that the user does not have to enter these values in the mobile device. So that's improving the accuracy of asset identification as well as damage assessment on the mobile device. So this is one of the use cases that we're trying to implement at one of our customers.
Excellent. Let me pull in Norm here. Norm, do you want to add anything to this?
Not a lot. I mean, I think what we're doing more and more of all the time is OCR technologies where we're taking invoices or we're taking text and we're turning it into data, and then we're using the historical data that Praveen mentioned. We're mashing that together to present to the end users what could the entries be, similar to what's happening when we fill in a web page and we filled that web page in before. Our web browser knows the history, and so it's presenting that to us. And so if we're seeing similar malfunctions occurring in equipment, then I want my end user, the person who's there making a decision, to be presented with something and become that data validator, not the data creator. The data has already been created. We've probably run that piece of equipment for many years. We've seen this condition before. We shouldn't have to recreate data that is sitting in history, just not visible at that time of entry. So I think these technologies really can help with bringing that data together. And certainly as we're doing that, we're training the model. That's what this is all about, really, is training that model. And that's back to, I guess, closing the loop, right? In the past, we left gaps in data. Now, if we're going to use these data models, we have to train them. We have to say what's good and what's bad, and keep doing that over and over again.
And yes, AI is only as good as the data you collect. So I think we can skip this here. I think Praveen already talked about it. The fact that once you are doing the analytics, right, from the IoT sensors and other data that you're collecting, you can automate the creation of a notification in SAP, or maybe you can add a step before you get an approval. But the idea is that you can now start automating some of the work processes around maintenance here. So let's talk to the next topic now. So Gen AI, in short, let's just call it Gen AI. So the initial use cases are, let's start with the broad use cases. So you can use Gen AI in search, Q&A, you can use it in marketing, you can use it in sales, you can use it for code generation. I mean, the use cases are infinite, right? What we want to focus today is how is this related to the maintenance world. So we were brainstorming, the three of us, and talking to some customers. So a couple of the low-hanging fruit seems to be, one is the search Q&A. So we all have standard operating procedures. We have maintenance manuals, installation guides, right? What if I could quickly find out, hey, how do I install this, pump? Rotating pump, whatever, right? So, and boom, the answers would come in. So that is a very use case. We've started 1 or 2 POCs with customers on the search. You can also call it, think of it as a maintenance assistant, right? It's right there next to you, and to be your friend and to be your expert, guide when you need help. So think about it as search, question and answers, a maintenance assistant. So that's one use case that we are thinking. And then, it really brings a conversational interface to what we are doing. So even for the mobile apps that we have developed for work orders and for inspections, we are now incorporating a conversational interface. So what if I could say, tapping 2 or 3 times, what if I just type, show me my work orders that are, due for in Canada, for example, as a region, and boom, all the work orders come from a SAP system, they're listed. So it's the ability to talk to the system. So we are going to bring that in as a part of Gen AI. And then maybe, Praveen, I pick your brain here, right? So what are the things we could suggest to the user or automatically create? So let's say if I'm working with a specific pole or of equipment, which is a very, can I just generate a report that has been generated based on, 100 reports before? What can we do with the contextual creation of data for maintenance?
In terms of contextual creation of data, Alok, what drives the contextual, rather generative AI in text-based conversation is use of a LLM or a large language model. Right?
Next to the maintenance world, where can we create a notification or a report, defects? What can we do based on, that?
Yeah, see, I mean, in terms of a conversational assistant to create these work orders and report, right? It's like conversational, a chat with your assistant to help create a notification without having access to a form to fill in the details, right? So for that chat to succeed and for the notification to succeed, you need to pass the necessary context for the creation of the notification. So that could be based on your location. That could be the image that you have captured of the asset. And then this information can be transmitted in a chat channel, which in turn gets interpreted, and then automatically a form representing the data inferred from the text that you've entered can be the starting point for the creation or the reporting of a notification. Similar for a work order. So generating these templates to report defects or status of an asset in the field is something which a generative AI can definitely help you with.
All right, great. Norm, any thoughts?
No, I think this is like SAP's enterprise search, but even better, right? Because this is going to search potentially everywhere. However, I don't know that it's that easy to connect this to your organization. Like, it's not like you can just take Chat GTP and deploy it behind a firewall and say, go forth and search and then create. But you guys would know about that better than me.
Right, and we'll touch upon it as we come to the close here. But let's look at the risk also, because it's not all let's just run out of the gates here, right? So there are risks associated with Gen AI, which is you can get sometimes incorrect answers, what is called hallucinations in the technical world, and so you have to understand that there are limitations there. And then data privacy. So we had a call earlier today. Customers are worried about, hey, I don't want my data to go to the OpenAI cloud, etc. Right? So there is that fear of my data being compromised. Does it go? How safe is it? So, but then but that's what we've been thinking about. How do you mitigate these risks? So absolutely, you can today, if you go to any of the OpenAI, you can work with Microsoft Azure AI. So if all your data remains in a virtual private cloud, You can even install on-premise smaller versions of these large language models on-premise, offline with no internet connection. Your data doesn't even leave your company firewall. So there are valid security fears, but there are solutions to overcome those concerns. So that's not a problem. So we wanted to put it out there that because a lot of people are probably thinking in your mind, hey, is it too unsafe? So you can do it in different ways. You can deploy it whatever works with your corporate risk profile, right? And coming to what Norm was saying, so how do you do this? So I have my own documents. How does this work happen? So what really happens is that let's say I have 100 maintenance documents and I want to do search on that. What we would do is we would take those maintenance documents. They could be PDFs or any other format, right? You basically put them. I'm going to go really high level. You put them in a vector database, right? And then you search the vector database. And with your prompt, when you say, hey, help me find all my bearings, right? The user question is then coupled with the context from your documents, fed into the large language model, and then the answer comes back, right? And so that's how you basically do this. It's not rocket science, but it is also not very easy. So you do have to put in some work. It's not like just chat GPT and it solves your problems. No, you have to put some work to build these apps. That's what you were saying, no. So yeah, the key word there is responsible. We want to do responsible generative AI. What does that mean? That means you need to define your AI governance right up front, right? See, hey, do I want to go on-premise language models or deploy this, or am I okay with going to the cloud? Both options are there. The virtual private cloud is there. And then, one should try to understand whatever model you use, the model owner or should basically give you, an explanation of the model, right? So those are the ways by which you can start to begin to, start doing this in a responsible fashion, understand the model, define your governance, and so on and so forth. And then how do you get started? So we are offering a proof of concept for either predictive or generative AI, since we've already started those projects. So we would love to do that. How do we talk about that? Just reach out to us and we'll do a 30 minutes call. We can have a one-on-one consultation. The key would be to identify the use case, right? So what is the use case among all the things you could do? Where do we start? And then how do we do a small project so we can begin to understand the architecture, the models, the costs if you were to do it in production? Because running a POC is not very expensive. It's actually cheap. But doing the same thing in production is something that one has to see, hey, what are the costs? Then is there an ROI for that? So, right. So we want to do it from a business perspective also. So the POC would help understand some of those questions and get those answers. And we are offering a special price for anybody who does the POC. So I think, is that the end of the slide? So we can move to contact information. Yeah, so, my email is there, our phone number is there. Reach out to us if you want to discuss more, just have a conversation. And let's open it up for question and answers. So I don't know if there's any question in the chat session, or you can even unmute the lines and let's take some Q&A.
So yeah, there is a question. As an organization, how do I start? What are the requirements?
Okay, I can take that. Whether it's generative AI or predictive AI, I think it all begins with, first of all, start with your business strategy, right? So what are you trying to accomplish? And then what is the use case? I think that it starts with the use case. Once you define the use case, then we can work with you in basically figuring out how do you actually execute on that? So what are the security things? Which models could you be looking at? There's a library of models there, right? So we'll probably have to work with a few different models to find out which model works best. Then you're going to look at the risk profile. How do I deploy this? Get your security team involved. Is it on-premise? If it's the cloud, is it a virtual private cloud? And then which cloud do I go to? Is it Azure? Is it Microsoft or somebody else? So those are some of the things that come to mind as you begin to start your journey here. Praveen, do you want to add to that, or Norm?
Yes, look, for the success of any AI ML project is the data. So you first need to determine if you have sufficient data to build these models, which will then perform either predictive or generative AI for you, right?
Yes.
So if you don't have images that you've been collecting of assets over a period of time, if you don't have shift logs that you haven't been collecting, reporting of events that occur in the plant, or if you don't have a CMMS to begin with, which does your plant maintenance, right? So those are the a fundamental, a starting point that you need to look at. So how much data do I have? Because ultimately, a machine language model is basically human intelligence, which is represented over a period of time, right? And to build that intelligence, I need to have data to begin with. And that'll be one of the first major checks that I have to do to see if I have sufficient data to start my AI project.
Very important point. Norm?
Yeah, I was going to say something slightly different. If you're concerned about your data, I think AI can help cleanse your data. So certainly we used to see a company called Ordinal that would take photos of nameplates and then they would crowdsource those photos and you'd get back a judgment from 5 different people. And then you'd pick the one, the statistically the one that was the most chosen. Well, AI, Chat GTP can do that now. Send your nameplate photos up. I guess Chat GTP doesn't, but there's other tools that can. Send your photos up. It'll come back with the data on the photos. So, even at that point, we don't have to look too far into the future if we want to get our house in order first. Use some of those technologies to cleanse your data. That's been a struggle for years and years and years as well.
Right, and just to add to that, and the other thing you also need to look at is, do I have the skill set within my company at this point in time, or if and do I need to train some of these people, because they will need to understand the data quality, the data engineering, the data pipeline. You got to get that, but then you also have to have your team members working on that, even if you work with a partner like us. So the people aspect cannot be ignored for sure in your team. Any other questions?
Yes. There is another question. What are the cost implications? How is it going to be the maintenance and training of the solution?
Right. So there are 2 aspects here. Let's start with predictive AI, right? So in the predictive AI, building the initial model is very easy, or training the model. You don't even build a model. There are hundreds of libraries available for image recognition or for data pattern. That's not a problem, right? The challenge is to keep the ML model in production, because new data comes in, the data characteristics could change, which means your ML model has to be updated. Once it's updated on the server, then you have to bring it down to the mobile app, right? So it's called the ML ops piece of it, can be costly, and because it's a life cycle of the model. A lot of people forget that. They're like, oh, I got the model. Your models could change. Today, maybe this model is working great, but you may find in 6 months there's a model that is even better. So the ideas of constantly making sure you have the right model, updating it, and integrating with a mobile app, that costs money, right? And so yeah. So those are the considerations you have to have. On the generative AI space, it's really early days. Doing a POC is very inexpensive. I think last I checked OpenAI, their costs are like, maybe 6 cents per 1,000 tokens. Think of a token as a word. So you can feed in back, 1,000 words and only pay 10 cents. I mean, that's really cheap. And only as we start doing these projects in production will we know the cost. But, part of the POC is, okay, as you do it, let's figure out what the cost in production would be. But starting a Gen AI POC is very inexpensive. Is there any other question?
Yes, there's another question, but we already answered that. So what are the potential risks that they need to be aware of?
Right. So the risk, really, let's focus on the Gen AI piece of it, is that there could be bias in the model. People do not understand the model, because remember, ChatGPT has 175 billion with the B parameters. Nobody understands this model. It just does what it does, right? There's risk, and then it can give wrong answers, right? So data, it doesn't know your domain specific data. That's where we have to fine tune the model or use some retrieval methods to get the answers. So those are some of the risks. And security, right? The data goes to the cloud. Of course, we are all using the cloud. It's supposed to be secure. It is secure for the large part, but anytime data goes out on the cloud, there's always a potential risk, right? But you can always do an on-premise implementation if you're really paranoid. So there are ways you can skin the cat. So I would like to thank the audience and thank Norm and Praveen and Sushil for joining us and helping set up this webinar. And again, we are offering a POC for anybody interested. Reach out to us and we will send you the slide decks and talk to you guys hopefully as we continue this journey. Thanks, everyone. Bye. Have a good day.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you all. Goodbye.
Bye.